Hello everyone, Find Me in LA here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day so far. Well, it's that time of year again. Halloween Horror Nights is just right around the corner, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to give you guys more HHN content as we all get ready for this cool event that we all love so much. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about my personal favorite scare zones that have ever been in Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood. So let's not waste any more time, let's just get straight into it. Now, when most people think of Halloween Horror Nights, the first thing that comes to mind are the incredible haunted houses that they offer every single year, whether it be like based on a movie or show or game, etc., or whether it's just like an original story being brought to life in like such cool gnarly ways. People always think of the houses, and if you're in Hollywood, sometimes you might even think about the Terror Tram, where you walk through like the world famous backlot and see all the famous movie sets that just so happen to be filled with monsters and such. But for this video, I thought I would show some love to the scare zones. You know, those outdoor street experiences where you'll never know what you might encounter. You might encounter a monster wielding an axe, or you might encounter like a weird alien or creature wielding a chainsaw. Yeah, those are always fun. Now, I actually have a confession to make. If you've been subscribed to me for a while, you probably might know this, but these past few years, I haven't really been like the biggest fan of HHN Hollywood scare zones. Don't get me wrong, the scare actors, fantastic. They always do like an amazing job. They're so good at what they do. Most of my enjoyment from the scare zones nowadays are because of them. But when it comes to like the actual like theming and like the decor and the ambiance, they've been kind of like lacking it these past couple of years. But there was a time where they did go all out. And honestly, like me making this video has kind of been like an interesting experience for me, because it made me go back down memory lane, and it made me reminisce about like my first couple years of attending HHN and reminiscing about the glory days of like how great the scare zones used to be in terms of like the theming. So the majority of the picks in my top 10 are going to be from like the 2010s. So yeah, like real like blast from the past kind of stuff. And if you're a newer HHN fan, you could think of this as like a history lesson. Now, before we dive into my actual top 10, I want to give you guys some honorable mentions. These three scare zones that I'm about to list aren't necessarily like my all-time favorites, but I feel like I would do a disservice of making a scare zone video without talking about these three picks right here. First of all, I gotta mention the Toxic Tunnel. Now, if you guys remember, back when we used to have the Metro sets for HHN, we would make our way down there by walking through a tunnel, and in that tunnel was a scare zone that ran for like 3 years, I think. At first, I didn't know how to feel about it. I thought it was just like a weird random nothing burger of a scare zone. But then like over time, like the more times they brought it back, the more it kind of grew on me. So now looking back now, I have like this newfound appreciation for the scare zone, and I know like it's a fan favorite. So yeah, I had to talk about the Toxic Tunnel. Next up is something I don't really see a whole lot of people talk about, but I think it's worth noting. Back in 2016, every single scare zone was themed to The Purge. So New York Street was themed to like Anarchy, the backlot was themed to election year. They even had like this cool like mega scare zone / outdoor mini maze. It was called the Gauntlet of Fear. It was around like the Parisian Courtyard area. I'm honestly not a Purge fan, but even I thought that was like really cool. You know, it was very immersive. You know, it gave you the impression that like once you exited a maze, like you're stuck in the middle of the Purge. I thought that was a really cool, neat idea. And finally, there's Murder of Crows. Now, first, it just started off with one singular character, Edgar Allan Crow, you know, funny little crow guy with a top hat. He immediately became a fan favorite, not just because of like how cool and unique and elaborate his costume was, but he would just kind of like roam around the park. He wasn't just designated for just one scare zone. He would just kind of like surprise people here and there. And then the following year, 2 new members were added to that crow family, which is also like such a cool delight. And then eventually they got their own scare zone, with the family getting even bigger. Newest addition being like this giant baby crow hatching. And I don't know, there's just something so cool and so endearing about like this one single fan favorite character just having like expanded lore. Like, I just think that's so awesome. Alright, now it's time to dive into the actual top 10. My number 10 is going to be The Exterminators from 2015. Way before it was even a terror tram, The Exterminators was a zone where the fire towers were. And if you ask me, I think this is definitely one of the more underrated zones we've had here in Hollywood. The concept is simple, but fun. Bug creatures taking over the world and killing humans? I dig it. Some people might not dig it though. Some people think a concept like that might be a little too silly to be taken seriously or to be found scary, but I personally really enjoyed it. It made for some really cool like creature designs with the different monsters and such. I remember they had like a truck on the side, and on top of that truck was like a giant like almost like a human raid spray can, and it had like a little like mist effect where it was supposedly like the toxic waste that would like kill the humans and such. I thought that was really cool. Very fun. Very fun and underrated scare zone. My number 9 is going to be Trick or Treat. Now, this is in the same year that they had the Trick or Treat maze. And right away, I think that alone is just really cool that Universal not only wanted to showcase this movie as a house, but also as a scare zone, as it should, as it deserves, because this movie is just so good. It's so iconic. And this is also like another fire tower zone similar to Exterminators, which means they also have a ceremony. And I think this one has the best opening ceremony out of all the ones they've done here in Hollywood. My number 8 is going to be All Hallows Evil from 2019. And honestly, the big reason why this is on my top 10 is mostly because of like the overall theming. It's a very like interesting theme that you don't really see very often in like haunts. It's like a more like a traditional like 1600s like Halloween aesthetic, like Samhain kind of stuff, Celtic kind of stuff. And it made for some like really cool and interesting looking characters, and like just like the props they use, like they really all just came together to make like a very cohesive like theme and storyline. I also really do like how, as you can see in this footage, that it almost kind of serves as like an outdoor mini maze in a way. Yeah, it has like a very interesting layout that like I really enjoy. And there are some other scare zones like this that I'm also going to be talking about that have like a similar layout that also do kind of feel like outdoor mazes. So yeah, All Hallows Evil, number 8. My number 7 is actually going to take us back to 2014 again. And the scare zone is Masquerade. Now, fun fact about the scare zone, there was like a poll out there like on Facebook or something that gave HHN fans the option to choose what scare zone is going to appear at the event. So they came out with like 3 different themes, all French related because it's going to be located in French Street. And they were like given a poll and they asked the fans like, oh, which one of these scare zones would you like to see come to life? And this is the one that won, Masquerade, which is basically just like set in like the 1800s. So like all these people are like decked out in like whole like masquerade attire, like these French aristocrats, but they all happen to be cannibals. So you got like bloody corpses on display here with like their organs spelled out at like the dining tables. Really cool stuff here. My number 6, which is also located in French Street, is going to be Monster Masquerade. Nowadays, the French Street scare zone is usually tied with the Parisian Courtyard house, because since you exit that house, you lead straight into that street, into that scare zone. And this was in the same year that they had the very first Universal Monsters house, obviously, keeping in theme with like all the monsters and such. But what's cool about the scare zone is that like it takes the Universal monsters and it gets them all dappered up and like fancy like dancing ball attire, and like they have like masquerade masks on top of like their like monster faces, which is really cool. Yeah, just the whole thing was just so aesthetically pleasing, and it was made for like such like a really cool like finale to the Universal Monsters house right next to it. Yeah, really good stuff here. Number 5 is going to be a little scare zone called Spirits and Demons of the East. Now, this scare zone has like a concept that I am genuinely surprised Universal hasn't once like revisited in like another scare zone or even a house. Basically, just like the overall gist of the scare zone is that it's basically taking like all the creatures and monsters from Asian folklore. And I think that's like a really cool idea because it really made for some like really cool and gnarly looking monsters. They had a couple of cool looking samurai demon characters. They even had like a 4-legged stilt walker, which looks like something straight out of The Grudge, which is just so damn terrifying. They even had Momo. They straight up had Momo dressed up in like a schoolgirl outfit, just like scaring people. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. As much as I love the Latin American houses, I'm always open to see like other foreign countries like have their mythos and legends explored in Horror Nights. And the first thing that I would like to see is this scare zone revisited as a house. My number 4 is going to be Luchadores Monstruosos. And basically, John Murray's idea was that like he was very fascinated by like the old classic like 1970s, 1960s like Mexican movies where there's always like a big famous like luchador always getting like paired up with like a monster that he has to fight at the end. He was always fascinated by those kinds of movies, and he decided to like pay an homage to those kinds of movies with this Scare Zone. And honestly, I think it's really cool. You have like monsters such as Frankenstein and the Gillman dressed up in wrestling attire to duke it out with like a bunch of other like fantastical luchadores. I thought that was just so brilliant. Just like the whole vibe was just so much fun. You could tell the actors knew exactly what type of tone like they were going for with the zone. It was so much fun. My number 3, we're going to be going back to 2014 again, and I think 2015 as well. Dark Christmas. This is basically Krampus before Krampus was a maze on Horror Nights. Yeah, just like a simple enough concept, just like a dark Christmas, taken over by Krampus and his like evil minions. But what's cool about this is that like I think this is what I consider like peak Halloween Horror Nights scare zone here in Hollywood. Just like the street is like super decked out, and it had to be like kind of decked out if you're dealing with like a Christmas themed. But yeah, like every like corner and crevice, so like all the like the displays like that are usually like in the park in the daytime, all Christmas themed. And also I remember that street being just covered in fog, which gives monsters room to like come out of the fog to like get better scares. And speaking of the monsters, the creature design is always like so cool, very unique looking, very freaky looking. If you ask any HHN veteran what their favorite scare zone is, chances are Dark Christmas is going to be in their top 3. And staying on the subject of holiday season, my number 2 is going to be Holidays in Hell. Yep, before it was a maze, it was a scare zone. And this was also like another Metro set scare zone, like All Hallows Evil, made for like kind of like an outdoor mini maze. I think the main reason why this is all like my number 2 of all time is just because like they had so much potential with the concept like holidays, covering all the major holidays in the calendar. And I think in my personal opinion, they really reached the full potential with this concept. You have like so much variety in all the different monsters and set pieces. Everything came together like so well. The whole scare zone was just so well done, so well put together. So yeah, Holidays in Hell is so great, but just not quite as great as my number 1, which is going to be, drumroll please, Noche de Brujas. Now, there may be some recency bias here since this is the newest addition to this top 10 and it's already at the number 1. But just hear me out, okay? When I walked through Noche de Brujas, it really took me back in time. It took me back in time to when I first started going to HHN, back when all the streets were super decked out, when there wasn't just like, oh, let's just throw in 2 Home Depot skeletons, paint them like neon colors, and then throw in like a diorama of like a bunch of random props that aren't even that scary looking, and then blast some dubstep music in the background, and then they just call it a day. That's like your average HHN Hollywood scare zone in a nutshell nowadays. But Noche de Brujas is different. It's on a whole nother level. They actually have different sorts of like props here and there that actually fit the theming, and the music fit the overall theme. And every 4 to 5 minutes, they have like a little mini ceremony where like witches come together to like circle around a cauldron and do like some kind of like witches spell. That to me is just so awesome. Everything about the scare zone is so awesome. Noche de Brujas to me like gave me something that I have been looking for these past couple of years when it comes to scare zones. And I really hope they keep this energy with the next Friend Street scare zone, or just all of the scare zones this year in general. And that is it. My top 10 favorite scare zones in HHN Hollywood. Those are all the scare zones that like spoke to me the most, the ones that I enjoyed the most. And I hope this year's scare zones and like the scare zones and like the other future HHNs are in the same level as these. That's going to be it for today's video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click the like button. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and click the subscribe button. Also, let me know down in the comments what your favorite scare zones are. Give me like a top 5 or a top 3. I'm very curious to hear you guys' thoughts. If you stuck around to the very end of the video, thank you so much for watching. And until then, see you all in the fog.